I'm Laura Miner. I'm the manuscript clearance advisor here at FSU. We are located in the graduate school. So, you might hear the graduate school thrown around sometimes saying about manuscript clearance, but we are technically in that office. We are part of the graduate school, but we just call it separately manuscript clearance to be clear. So I'm the main manuscript clearance advisor. The only other person working with me on manuscripts is Jeff Norsini. He works part-time, so he is not here today. He'll do typically, well, I guess everybody's here going to be dissertation, but he'll do all the master's manuscripts, but he'll also do dissertations because there's more of those. So he does all the masters and then, a portion of the dissertations, whatever I can't get to, because I'm also dealing with admin and all that stuff. So, but today we're going to be going over formatting requirements, and as well as some tips and tricks about how to achieve certain things that we're asking for in Word. And I want to start with showing you our website, since I feel always like it's kind of hidden. And Jeff Phillips was kind enough to put the link in the chat, so I'm actually going to use that. All right, let me see if I can get out of that. All right, so so I'll show you where to get it from the graduate school. So gradschool.fsu.edu. If you go to academics and research and then thesis, treatise, and dissertation, or you can just scroll down and go to manuscript clearance information. This is our main website that has all of our information on it. Sometimes programs will copy and paste it to their own websites or copy a link or something. So just make sure that it's a live link and isn't, downloaded and then uploaded, because we do update the stuff here on occasion. And but the workshop today is only half of our typical workshops. So the other half is typically about all of the deadlines and forms and all of those kinds of things. And that's usually the first hour of our manuscript clearance workshop. So if anybody is interested next semester, we've already finished them for this semester, but next semester we'll have some in the beginning of the semester. And I would advise at least attending the first hour, if not the whole thing over. It's up to you. If you feel like you need more formatting, need to hear it over again, that's fine. But yeah, that first hour will be pretty crucial to knowing what to expect in the process. And so all of this is gone over, but I'd like to point out that our guidelines, the guidelines are here. We're going to go over most of those today. And then we also have templates available to start with, and some other formatting assistance documents. I'm going to walk you through how to do a couple of these things here in the workshop. And our full slides for our workshop, for the one that we do that's 2 hours, are down here. So you can also look at that if you're interested. And I'll make sure that that I don't know if I gave them this set of slides, but I'll make sure they get that as well so that you can have it. Okay. Every time. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I do want to mention, I'm not going to go really into this, but I like to mention that, make sure that you have your approvals prior to starting your research. So if you need approval from the Animal Care and Use Committee for vertebrate animals or from the Human Subjects Committee, make sure that you are getting that ahead of time. And if you're not sure if you need it, you should be checking with them, because they are the ones that determine whether you need it or not. Sometimes major professors will tell you that, you don't need it, but I would say get it in writing from the IRB office. That way you're covered. It's on occasion. Every now and then something makes it through that shouldn't have. And, we don't like doing that to students, but it does happen. If you have any questions about copyright, we have the Office of Digital Research and Scholarship here at FSU. Camille Thomas is who I typically send people to. Actually, I should have put her email on here. I'll put it in the chat. Yes, Camille is great. And so she'll be your person, your person for anything regarding copyright. They're working on publishing a Canvas module that will be all about copyright regarding thesis and dissertation. So, you know, look out for that. At some point it'll get sent out and posted somewhere, but we'll add it to our website as well, a link to it. But just this comes up a lot for us, and we're not actually the experts on it, that we do know we can't answer basic questions, but other than that, you know. So I'm not going to go into the process of actually submitting your manuscript and what all that entails, because it just takes too long, but I do want to mention that there's a pre-defense manuscript format review, and there are deadlines for that are listed on our website, and it needs to be at least 90% complete before you submit it to us for format review, because then otherwise, you know, it doesn't really make sense for us to review it if it's all going to change. I mean, sometimes it still does change a whole lot with your defense, but, you know, to the best of your knowledge, include all the sections, and we're going to go over that, and then make sure that you've paid attention to formatting. And yeah, we do on occasion send back manuscripts because they have not been properly formatted, or that they are obviously incomplete. You know, we don't expect it to be perfect, but we expect it to look like you've seen our guidelines. You know, typically if you're here, you're not going to have an issue, but on occasion people haven't seen what we're asking. Just a brief overview so that you get an idea of what the manuscript consists of. And this is a little different for anybody doing treatise with music or a creative writing manuscript. They're a little more ambiguous as far as the sections, but if anybody has questions about those specifically, you're welcome to send me an email and I can talk to you about that, or we can set up a time to chat. This is the front matter, is what we also call the preliminary pages. So title page, committee page. These are optional dedication and acknowledgements. Most people have the acknowledgements, but that's up to you. Table of contents, lists. These are required if you have more than one figure or table. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then abstract is always the last section in the front matter. You have your chapters. We don't have a requirement for how many or what to call them. We do require that if you're going to have an unnumbered introduction, that you also have an unnumbered conclusion. Otherwise, they should all be numbered. And then obviously if you have any appendices, and then your references and a short biographical sketch. Biographical sketch can be your CV, or you can write a couple paragraphs or a couple sentences. I've seen as little as a single sentence, which looks a little funny, but you know, it's your manuscript. So as long as the section's in there and is appropriate, we'll take it. All right, so some of the things we go over are going to be very basic, like page size, and then some things will be a little more in depth, but page size, obviously 8.5 by 11 inches here in the USA. Just be sure when you're converting to PDF to check your page size prior to submitting the manuscript to ProQuest, which is part of the submission process, because sometimes, especially computers from overseas, will automatically convert it. And I have a link to a guide to how to fix that setting if it's not working for you. So just, you know, let me know. Margins are 1 inch, top, bottom, left, and right. We don't have it changed throughout the manuscript. There's no exceptions for things being in the margins except for your page numbers. Speaking of page numbers, those go at the bottom of the page in the center. They're approximately 3/4 inches from the bottom page, 0.75. We're not, you know, measuring it, so if it's a little, you know, one way or the other, it's fine. But if it looks too high up into the text or too close to the bottom of the page, we will have you fix it, and that can move a lot of things around. So try to make sure it's right the first time, so that you're not having everything shift when you do that. Those preliminary pages, the front matter, those are all numbered with lowercase Roman numerals. The title page, your first page of the manuscript, is page 1, page I, but it is not numbered. And I'm going to show you how to achieve this. The body of the manuscript, starting with the first page after the abstract, which is usually chapter 1 or introduction, that you switch to Arabic numerals and you start over with number 1. And this continues throughout the rest of the manuscript. And if I go too fast about anything, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I have it up, as well as the moderators here, so we can answer your questions. And some things may come up as I'm going on, but feel free to ask questions. Your font, it should be the same throughout the entire manuscript. You would be surprised how many times I get chapters in different fonts, but you know, when you copy and paste things in, sometimes it brings in other stuff, but you should be using a TrueType font. That's most things that you're going to be familiar with using: Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri. Do a Google search, it'll bring up a whole list of them, but most anything that you're going to be likely to use will be that. But that makes sure that everything stays the same between, you know, computers and between the conversion to PDF. Just makes sure everything looks the same between Word and then PDF. Your font size should be 12 point. That includes your subheadings, your table headings, and your figure captions. A lot of times people try to make those smaller font, but they should all be 12 point. You can, however, make your text within the tables or figures smaller, or your footnotes, or if you have table notes. So sometimes there are notes below the table and those can be smaller. The one thing is that if you choose to do that, you should do it consistently for all of them. And honestly, if you take anything else away from this, it should be that the manuscripts, the consistency is the biggest thing. So there are some things where, you know, we say you have to do it this way. Other things, let's do it this way or this way, as long as you're consistent, or, you know, whatever you want, as long as you're consistent. So just make sure that, you know, you take the time to go throughout each chapter and make sure everything's the same, because that's the biggest issue that we have, is things being different in different places. Your main section headings, that's at the top of the page. So like the label for the list of tables, the abstract, your chapter headings, your titles, they can be up to 14 point, but no larger. And again, if you choose to do that, it should be consistent. And then use black font for everything that is outside of tables and figures. And that includes hyperlinks. Hyperlinks should be made black, even if they're still active. All right. So line spacing is either 1.5 or double spaced for the entire manuscript, starting with the abstract and the body of the text and your biographical sketch, if it is in paragraph form. So if it's a CV, you can just have it, you know, however you have that formatted. But you should choose one of these and have it be the same. There are some exceptions, obviously, a whole list here. You would think it'd be easier to just say, you know, do whatever, but exceptions include the committee page. We require that to be 1.5 line spacing. I have no idea why that is, honestly. It was before I started here, and it's just something that probably a holdover from past days, but that page is 1.5. The list of tables and figures and the references are all single spaced with a blank line between each entry. So between each table heading or between each reference citation. And then your table headings and figure captions should all be single spaced. And those table notes, like I mentioned, can also be single spaced if you want, if you're doing it consistently. Same with block quotes and footnotes. We allow different spacing there as long as it is consistent. Footnotes, as a note, note about footnotes. We do not have requirements for what those look like. I recommend having them be the same font as your manuscript because it's distracting otherwise. But we don't really, you know, we don't really have requirements about those. We get questions sometimes, and it's not something we police. Your lines, this is just a note, and I'm going to show you how to access this menu in case you don't know. Some people know a lot about formatting, some people know a little, so I like to cover it. But this before and after spacing is one of the most irritating things and most helpful things you can have in Word, because it can create a shortcut for you to create spacing between paragraphs automatically, but it can also add extra space around paragraphs that you do not want. And if you're not aware of this setting, you have no idea why this is not, why you can't delete the space. So this is something to be aware of. Generally, it should be 0 point if you're not aware of what you're doing. And we have it set to 0 in our template. And yeah, that's the main thing. It'll make this larger between paragraphs or whenever you hit enter. So it's a big deal usually around headings and subheadings. You get that extra space. I have to make sure I go fairly fast because I'm used to having more time. So please just ask questions if you have any. I go over something too fast, but headings and titles, they are all centered, all caps at the top of the page, and they should be either the Arabic numeral or spelled out. Make sure it's consistent for each chapter, whatever you decide to do, and make sure the spacing is consistent between all chapters and appendices. Appendices are done the same way, except with Appendix A, Appendix B, and they should have titles as well. This is usually a single blank line. I will allow 2 blank lines if it's consistent. I'm not sure about Jeff. I'd have to ask him to see what he does, but I'm pretty sure as long as it's consistent, we let it go, but please don't be excessive with it. You know, all that extra space isn't necessary. Subheadings, I would say this is the main thing we end up writing about in manuscripts because it is so easy to change however you decided to format them between chapters, especially when you're working on one chapter this month, another chapter the next month. I recommend finding a style guide, whatever your college or program typically uses, like MLA or APA or yeah, I'm forgetting that, Chicago. Find that and just choose that and follow that style so that you have something to refer back to make sure that you're doing it the same for each one. We don't have requirements for following one of those. We don't care if you are allowed to follow any style guide up to the point that it conflicts with our guidelines. At that point, you have to choose ours. On occasion, there are committees that will require you to have it entirely in one of those styles. And unfortunately, that is their prerogative, but you do have to change the formatting to submit it to us. And I know that that's completely bonkers, but it's faculty sometimes, you know. The subheading levels, each level within a section has to be formatted differently from all of the other levels, but then consistently across every chapter. And I'm going to show you an example of that on the next slide, but you can use any variation of capitalization except for all caps or small caps, so title or sentence case. I'll also show you that in case you haven't heard of that. Alignment, centered, left, indented, bold, italics, underlined, any of that you can use. We ask you not to use color or font size, as I've mentioned in previous slides, but there's a large combination of things you can do here. So whatever you choose is fine, but I do recommend following a style guide. If you're using numbers for your subheadings, you have to number at least the first and second levels. Beyond that, it's up to you. You can number, you know, levels down to 1.1.3.2.1. It gets a little crazy. I usually recommend don't number more than 3 levels, but it is up to you. And but you do not have to use numbers for your subheadings. And I'll show you, you know, what I mean if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. But each subheading at the bottom of the page should have at least 2 lines of body text under it. That doesn't include footnotes or other subheadings. If 2 lines of the text do not fit under it at the bottom of the page, you should move it all to the top of the next page. And be careful not to skip levels of subheading. So it has to go, you know, second followed by a first, or third followed by preceded by a second, preceded by a first. You can't skip from first to third or start with a second in a chapter. They all have to be in order like that. It's easy to do though, so we do catch that. This is an example of subheading formatting. I believe this is APA. I'd have to double check, but I think it is. This is the first level subheading, so you know the main sections within each chapter, and bold centered title case, which is capitalizing all of the main words. This is the second level, and it's left aligned title case again and bold. And then down here we have a third level, and this is sentence case, so you only capitalize proper nouns. It's part of the paragraph and indented and ends in a period to separate it from the text. So that's just an example. You don't have to do it that way, but it's a common one that we see. Tables and figures, tables and figures aren't required, but most people do have them depending on what type of manuscript you're doing. But we do get some with like history and classics and stuff that don't have any in English, so that's fine. But if you have more than one table or more than one figure, you'll need a list for each set. and each list is on its own page. And I'm going to pull up a sample manuscript in a minute to kind of give you a visual, but this applies even if all of your figures and tables are in your appendices. You still have to have them included in the list. So don't just include the ones that are in the chapters, or you'll have to go back and add them all. You can choose one of two ways to number your figures and tables. You can number them consecutively across the whole manuscript. So you'll start with figure one or table one, and continue that throughout the entire manuscript, all the way through the appendices. Or you can relate the number to the chapter or appendix that they are in. So the figures in chapter 1 would be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. The tables would also be 1.1, 1.2. In the appendices, they switch to the letter for the appendix. So A.1, A.2, B.1. This is up to you. Just be consistent. Don't do this in the chapters and then this in the appendices. You can also choose how to include your figures and tables in your manuscript. A lot of people choose to embed them in the text, like throughout the text in their chapters, and that is fine. It can be a much bigger hassle for you though, because you have to follow our white space rules, and people get kind of irritated about it sometimes. But if you think of a textbook or a journal, they're filling the space with text. They're not leaving big chunks of white space, and I'm gonna talk about that in another couple slides as well, show you an example. But you can also choose to group them at the end of each chapter. So all of the figures and tables for that chapter will be at the end of the chapter. In that case, we don't care about the white space as much, or you can group them all in one or more appendices. This allows you to not have all of this editing where you're having to move chunks of things around, and it saves you a lot of time. But sometimes your committee will have strong opinions about it, so I would check with them as well. We are going to go over multi-page tables in a couple slides. All of your table headings, figure captions need to be unique. So make sure you're not repeating the same things over and over again. Like, don't just say, statistics, like, it needs to be specific to what that is. So everything should be specific to that table. Even if you're going to repeat the same figure somewhere else in your manuscript, which honestly, just refer back to it and put a page number. But if you choose to do that, you still have to make it different. So even if it's the exact same thing, figure out, put revisited or again or something, one word, and we're fine. That's it. Tables all have to have a heading. It's located above the table, single space, 12-point font, as I've mentioned on previous slides. So it's basically formatted the same as the body text, except for the single spacing. This should be clearly separated from all of the text around it. So if there's a figure caption above it, or if there's a table notes from another table above it, or your paragraphs, make sure there's enough space that it does not look like it's part of that previous thing. I usually say two single space blank lines, but it is not a requirement. Just be, cognizant that you're not putting too much space and that it's not like running on top of each other. Figures are similar. They have a caption, and that goes below the figure. That's the main difference. Also single space, 12-point font, and separated from the text around it. Multi-page tables, in this case, your entire heading is going to go above only the first part of the table. So on the page where it starts, you'll only include that page number in the list of tables. You don't need a range of page numbers. And then on all of the pages where the table is continued, you'll place table number continued above the table and repeat your column and row headings. If you have any column row headings, that's not typical, but I'm going to show you, this can get a little irritating because in order to do this, you usually have to split the table. And when you start moving stuff around, if it's embedded, that becomes an issue. But I will show you how to do it. And yeah, I'll show you the best way to take care of that. But multi-page figures, also similar. The caption, at least the first line of it, has to go under the first part of the figure. Sometimes just the figure continues, sometimes just the caption continues. We see that sometimes in the hard sciences, most likely. On every page following the first part, you'll put figure number continued, and it doesn't have to be exactly this, but just make sure it has the figure number and continued. The formatting doesn't have to be exactly like that, but don't add the caption a second time. If it's continuing, that's fine. If it's just the caption that's continuing, you'll put this above the caption instead. But that's pretty much it for those. All right, so when I was talking about white space, this is an example. We see this a lot. Tables, you talk about it. So you put the table, you talk about it a little bit, then you have a figure, and so you switch to the next page and you talk about it a little bit. But this is not something that we allow. You'll have to take text from the next page and move it here, even if it's a little bit out of order. You know, that's why we reference the figures and their page numbers in the text sometimes, so that the reader can find them. Readers they're smart. They know how to follow, you know, what's in the text. It's not a big deal. But some people get very anxious about, you know, moving things around like that. But you can also instead play with the spacing or size of your tables and figures. Sometimes that gives you a little extra space. So really you just kind of have to get creative. And if you need an idea, like I can look at it and see if I can figure out a way if you're stuck on one. But really no more than an inch of blank space should be at the bottom of a page, unless it's the end of a chapter, or if you're putting all of the figures and tables at the end, you can have space around those. We do still want you to place more than one table or figure on the page if they fit. So don't just put like a tiny little table at the top and then go to the next one and do another tiny little table. Obviously put those on the same page. Reduce white space where possible, but it's much simpler when it's at the end or in an appendix. We did make an allowance for tables or figures that are at least 2/3 of the page. We're pretty strict about like the size, so make sure it's 2/3. You know, obviously it's not a measurement, but use your best judgment. And if you're not sure, fill the text in. But if you choose to follow this and just have it on the page by itself, and this is when they're embedded in the text, at the end, it's not as big a deal, but in the text, center it on the page horizontally and vertically and just let it be. Sometimes this can also help you with something later where you can't get away with leaving the white space. So you can take the text off of one where you have a big enough figure or table, and it pushes everything down and fills that white space. So keep that in mind as well. Oh, good timing, perfect. So I was not sure how quickly I was going to get through that, but I am going to pull up my Word example and show you some stuff. We do also allow students to use LaTeX. I'm not sure if anybody in here would be doing that or not, but if you are, we have a LaTeX template on our website where I showed you, and it's also in the chat. Please use the template. There are a few things in that template that we allow that are different from our standard Word version because of the way LaTeX works. But if you're not using the template, which is typically pretty apparent, you do have to follow it exactly, and it's a little more difficult. So please use the template. And we do have a contact at FSU as well for help with that if you have that. Because me and Jeff do not know how to do it. Goals at some point, but I am not currently versed in it. So this is the title page of the manuscript. I always gotta hide the tools. Okay, now I can see. I like to show you a couple of things that I have on when I'm editing the view. There it is. Okay, so I already have it on, but I think the default is not to have it on. So under view and then ruler, I like this because one, you can see your margins, the grade area, and then you can also see things like tabs and indents. They'll have a little, I'll show you here. See, this is an indent that starts here. It just basically shows you kind of a little bit more what's going on. And if you're not sure if something's in the margins, you can hold down on the little arrows here that by the margins, and it'll put a little line down. And you can see if it's in there or not, which I find helpful. But the title page and committee page, we have some guides on these on our website. We're pretty specific on these. It needs to be pretty exact. You're just replacing your information in here. You can choose to put the copyright statement or not. I recommend it, but it's not required. This is the committee page. No signatures on here. It used to be that way, but it's not anymore. But this should be exactly the same as this, except with your information. You'll see these are actually in the center of the page, but they are left aligned, and that's why there's an indent here. So you can use either tabs or, and I'll show you, I'm going to show you the tab menu in a second for your table of contents, but you can use tabs or you can use indents and to get these perfectly lined up. Using a space bar is a pain and it makes it very difficult to line everything up. So we recommend doing it that way. But oh, I almost forgot. The other thing I like to have turned on when we're doing editing is under the paragraph section here. It's this backwards P, which is called a Pilcrow, but it's to show your formatting. And these are non-printing characters, so they don't print when you print it out. They're just to show you your formatting, and it shows things like page breaks and section breaks, which you don't normally see and can cause a lot of issues if you don't know that they're there. And then each of these backwards P's is a paragraph. So usually whenever you hit enter, you're creating a new paragraph, and that paragraph has the same formatting as the paragraph above it until you change the formatting. And then everything below that would still be that way as well. So this is, you can also see things like your tabs and indents. So these are tabs, the little arrows, and it just allows you kind of to see what's going on. Sometimes you'll have an extra space somewhere that you don't know is there, especially at the top of the page sometimes, and you can see that with this. And the paragraph menu, you can get to either through right-clicking and going to paragraph, or doing this little arrow here, paragraph settings. This is that menu I was showing you that has the spacing before and after. And this before and after is before and after each one of these backwards P's. So each one of those is a paragraph, and it would add extra space around each of those. So you can see where that would start to add a whole lot of extra space. Also, you'll want to be aware of the indentation. Sometimes when you have centered subheadings or main section headings, they'll be a little bit off center, and that's because usually there's either a first line indent set. A lot of, like, whenever your paragraphs, you has an automatic indent in the first line. That's what this setting is. So you can go in and put it to none or change these to 0 if you don't need the indent. And we're going to go over the tabs menu, so I'll come back to that. I recommend putting a page break at the end of each section. Whenever you're going to a new section that starts by itself and should start at the top of the next page, enter a page break. That's on a PC, it's Control Enter. On a Mac, I believe it's Command Return. I don't know. I don't think it's Enter. I think it's Return, but I don't have a Mac, so I'm not 100%. But you can also find it through the layout menu here under breaks, and then page break. Section breaks, we're going to use one in just a second. I'm going to show you it, but generally you should not be using section breaks for anything except for when you set up your page numbers and for landscape, any landscape tables or figures that you might have in the manuscript. And Jeff has a help document about making sure your page numbers are continuous throughout the manuscript when you're using landscape pages, because that becomes a big issue because of the section breaks. When you have a section break, your formatting won't carry across every section unless you have certain things set up the right way, which is not default. So if you change formatting in a previous section, anything after it in a new section where you've had put in a section break will not change. So it makes things very inconsistent. So please don't use section breaks unless you absolutely have to with landscape pages and your page numbers. Otherwise, page break, that's your way to go. And this keeps things from moving around. So like if I didn't have this and I started, deleting things here. Oh, that's not a good example. So you can see once I took that out, everything from the next page moved backwards. So whenever you start editing and you're adding things in one chapter, it's going to move your main section heading away from the top of the page. And each chapter starts at the top of a new page. So it ends up being all over the place. So if you put in that page break, Control Enter, it'll automatically move things to the top of the next page and they will not move backwards. See, this is an example of having that extra space above your heading that you wouldn't see without that. All right, so acknowledgements. This is the dedication. Dedication does not have a heading. It's just centered in the page. We ask for no pictures in this, please. Acknowledgements, completely up to you, but it does have a main section heading. And table of contents, I'm going to show you how to format this manually. Some people choose to use the automatic table of contents generator in Word. That is not something we include in our templates at the moment. It's something we're looking at including, but generally people have more trouble with it than it is worth. It can cause a lot of issues with not having things tagged right, and then certain things won't show up in the table of contents, or things you don't want show up in the table of contents, and it doesn't format it exactly how we're asking you to format it. So if you're not familiar with how to make changes to it, it can be a little frustrating, and that's why we don't put it in our template currently, but it's something we're working on having a help document for. For now, doing it manually, you're going to use the tabs menu, and that's in order to get this lined up, the page number lined up over here and having these dots. Please do not enter periods for your dots. It doesn't work. It looks usually very off, so just try and follow this. So with this, you don't even actually have to highlight it. You just put your cursor inside of this paragraph here, and then you'll go to the paragraph menu and this tabs button down here. So we want the page number to stop at 6.5 inches. That's where the margin is on the right side. So we're going to put in 6.5. We want it to be aligned to the right margin, and then we want a dot leader here. So you click set and it moves it down into the box. That way you know that the setting's been entered in there, and you click OK. And it looks like nothing happened, but if you put your cursor right before the page number and hit the tab key, it's automatically going to line it up to the right margin for you. And it does it exactly every time. It's great. But if you have multiple things to format this way, or if you use our template and for some odd reason the formatting is not continuing from one thing to the next, you can always copy the formatting to the line that is not formatted. So if you copy this, and I'll answer that in a second, but or if Jeff wants to type in it, but if you go to Format Painter under Clipboard here, if you single click it, you can then copy the formatting to one thing. If you double click it, it'll stay copied until you double click something else in the manuscript or another button. So I'm just going to single click it because I only need to do one thing. So now you can see this little paintbrush floating here, and you're going to highlight whatever you're wanting to copy the formatting to, and go all the way to the end of the little paragraph. And again, it looks like nothing happened, but and then that way you didn't have to go through all of the settings with the tab and all of that stuff. We ask for your chapter numbers and your titles to be on the same line, and that is one thing that automatic table of contents generator will not do because of the way that we have you set up your main section headings. But there is a way to do that, which if you're using that, I can I can show you how to do that if it's something that you're wanting to use to how to get it to work. But these to set it up with them being indented, which we do require, each level of subheading should be indented under other levels, and they should all be done the same way for each chapter. You will add additional tabs. You can see here, and actually I don't think this first one is necessary, but these are left aligned and do not have a dot leader. So you can see these little backwards, I don't even know what to call that, backwards L kind of, that shows you where each tab stop is. And so whenever you press the tab key, the first time you press it, it will stop at 0.2. The second time is at 0.6. And then the last time is 6.5. And that's the right one. These aren't exact numbers. You can use whatever numbers you want. Just make sure that it's consistent and that it's clear that there are different levels. And that's the best way to do that. Again, this is all set up in our template as well. So you can either copy and paste that into your document, or you can use that document to start with. We typically recommend adding no more than 2 levels of subheadings in your table of contents. It doesn't mean you can't have any other ones in your manuscript, but it just makes for a more concise table of contents. You get to a certain level and they don't really mean anything, but you can actually, for us at least, I don't know about your committee, but for us, you do not have to add any subheadings to your table of contents. So if you just want to do the front matter, the chapter headings, and any appendices and the ending matter, that's fine with us. Honestly, it's much easier for us to check. So we love when we get ones like that, but a lot of people do choose to put at least the first level. Whatever levels you want to include in the table of contents, it should be the same for all of your chapters. So you can't choose, to do first and second for one chapter and just first for another. And we do check this like every single thing. Like, it is tedious. So please make sure to have it correct. List of tables. This is how it is formatted. Like I mentioned, they're single spaced with a blank line between each one. You can have this as table 1 or table 2. We don't really care as long as you have them numbered and they match what's in the text. You can set these up the same way with that tab menu. And then I will show you a quick shortcut for this. If you just enter them all in one by one, and then you highlight all of them and go into the paragraph menu, since you need a blank line after each paragraph, and each one of these you can see has a paragraph after it. If you add 12 point, that's a single blank line because that's the font size you're using. And then you click OK. It's automatically going to put a line between each one, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's a quick nifty thing to do that. And you don't have to do it that way, but some people who like things like that, I like to show it. Page numbers. Okay, so this is the abstract. We need a page number. So the page numbers, it's a lot of steps. We have help documents for all of these things that I'm showing you on our website under templates and formatting assistance. All of these, they're screenshots, and Jeff has my Jeff has made them, and obviously we can't cater to every version of Word, but thank you, it's my dog. But it should still be under the same categories and stuff, so you should still be able to find it, but let us know if there's anything that isn't correct, and we'll do our best to fix it. For the page numbers, first I like to make sure, so I just double clicked down here in the footer. That'll open up the footer, but you can also get to it under insert. Yes, insert, header, and footer, and then you can just go into the footer, and you can edit footer. But we're actually going to add a page number, and most people know how to add the page numbers through that thing, that the menu I just showed you. But first, I want to make sure that they're at the right point from the bottom of the page. So this footer from bottom is where we want it to say 0.75. Enter. So now they're good, and that'll be the entire way through the manuscript because there's no section breaks in here yet. If there was a section break, you would have to change it in each section. So just be aware of that, especially if you're having landscape tables or figures. You'll need to make sure that it changes in each section. And there's a way to set it up so it does it automatically, and that's what Jeff's help document is about. So take a look at that. We're going to put in the page number now, which is here, because once you're in the footer, it opens header and footer tools. So we want bottom of the page and then center. All right, so we got the page number. We have several things we need to do to it though. So first, almost every time you insert a page number, it's going to add a blank line under it. I have no idea why. It's very annoying. Most people don't know it's there. And honestly, this isn't, if it doesn't look like it's causing it to be too high on the page, we're not going to say anything. But you do, if you have on the Pilcrow, the show hide formatting, that will show you the extra space, and backspace or delete, whichever computer you're using, and then get rid of it, and you can see it move down the page. So now I entered the page numbers, but we need to make them different in the front matter and the rest of the manuscript. So we're going to enter a section break. This is the one place you'll use a section break if you did not use landscape tables or figures. So this is under layout, breaks, section breaks, and then next page. So we want the next section to start on the next page. And you can see now it says section break next page. So you're aware that it's there. It added an extra line here, so we're going to delete that. Okay, so now we need to, and you see because of the section, it starts this over on page 1, which is what we want. This is right. But we need to fix these to be lowercase Roman numerals. So I'm going to double click into the footer again, and then go to page number, format page numbers. And under this drop down number format, you switch it to the lowercase Roman numerals and click OK. So now we have lowercase Roman numerals in the front matter, and then it'll start at 1 on chapter 1. The last thing that we need to do, stay in there, is get rid of this page number on the first page, because this is technically, like I said, page 1, but it is not numbered. The first numbered page is here on the double I. And the easy way to do this is under here under options, different first page, check that box, and it's gone. So you can see if I take off the formatting, there's no page number here. We got lowercase Roman numerals and Arabic numerals. All right. So turn that back on. Let's see, does it technically end at 150? Or do I have a couple minutes?
Technically 150, but feel free to take another 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. I will show you guys what I was, these are misnumbered currently. I need to fix this. This should actually be 1.1, 1.1.1. But the chapter, so if you're using the automatic table generator, how you'll need to set this up. Otherwise, so these will be on 2 lines in the table of contents, the way it's set up right now. But if you're using that, you'll want to use what's called a, wow, I'm blanking on the term for it, a soft return, I think. So you'll want to get everything on 1 line, and then you're going to hit Shift Enter. And you can see it's a different character here, which means that technically this is still all 1 paragraph, even though you forced it onto a second line. And that will make sure that it's on the same line in the table of contents if you're using the automatic one. Okay, so for the table, this is a multi-page table, and we need to set it up accordingly. Some people choose to put in an extra row and take off the borders and put in and type into that. It's complicated if you do not know, if you're not really familiar with editing tables and stuff, as far as the borders and merging cells and all that stuff. So we typically just tell you to split the table, which to do that, you put the cursor in the top row here on the, make sure that the table's, complete, and then you can put your cursor here and then go to table layout and split table. You'll see it insert it. Now these are technically two separate tables, so you have to be careful when you start moving stuff around, but this is going to be table 1 continued, and that can be bold, italics, whatever you want. We don't really care as long as it's there and it's consistent. And then you need to put in your continued headings. So you'll insert rows above. You can also get to that here in layout, insert above, and then just copy and paste the information from your, there is there's a way to do the headings automatically when this table has not been split, but when it's been split, you have to just copy and paste it manually like that, which is a little irritating, but all right, let me see if there's anything else I should mention before we go. A lot of times you'll have figures and you want to be able to move them around more. Most times when you first copy and paste something in, it's going to be in line with text, and that makes it you can't really drag it. It's harder to drag around and harder to manage where it goes. So we recommend putting doing square or, you know, top and bottom works too. But then that way you can move things a little easier and resize them a little easier. And I just shifted everything. All right, so like I said, with the appendices, they're the same way with the titles. You would use the same soft return, the shift enter, if you're using the automatic generator. I won't go over that. This isn't a requirement, it's just a nice thing. But if you have an IRB approval or some other type of PDF, you can insert that. It's insert object. And this sometimes will also just be little squares, so you have to kind of know what you're looking for. Adobe Acrobat. Let's see if I can find it on my desktop. It's not going to work. There it is. Okay. So it'll insert it and then it'll open Adobe. Just close that so that you can manage it. And then you can go to picture layout. You can do square, so you can move it around and then center it. Then you can, you know. The only thing with this is that you have to do one page at a time. So if you have multi-page ones, you'll have to do one page at a time. And Jeff has a help document on that as well. And this last thing, you can also do what I was showing you with the after for your references if you enter them that way. I know some people use an automatic tool that you insert from a program, and that's fine. Just make sure that it matches our formatting. We don't have a requirement for how you actually, the actual content of these. So whatever style guide you follow is fine. You know, we don't actually look at what's in the references. We look at the format of them. So with this, you could also do that 12 point, like I mentioned, and yeah, should still be single spaced. If you want to do a hanging indent, you can do that here automatically as well. So you don't have to do it one by one, and it'll automatically make it correct. And then biographical sketch, you should still have a heading even if you put in your CV, and make sure that you're not including your contact information, since that's usually subject to change. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Let me just pull up my contact info really quick and we'll be all done. So we're mostly remote still at this point. So just send us an email or leave me a message. I would say email for me is the quickest way to get me, because I'm checking my voicemail intermittently. Jeff is kind enough to add his cell phone because I guess he's a crazy person. I don't know, but he has a cell phone here for anybody that needs to know. Needs to get a hold of him. He works part-time Mondays, Tuesday mornings, and Thursdays, but checks his emails most days either way. So either one of us can answer pretty much any question. So, you know, just check in with us and we are happy to help you as much as we can. So just know we're here. And thanks for listening.